Okay, let's start the webinar this morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Knowing Your Audience webinar, brought to you by the Hertfordshire Growth Hub and Focus7 International. For those that don't know or have never worked with the Growth Hub before, I'm going to run through a few slides with you in terms of what we do with the Growth Hub, how you can get in contact, and then what I will do is I will then hand over to Leona, who's going to deliver this session for you. Okay, excellent. So we're the Hertfordshire Growth Hub. We're led and delivered on behalf of the Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership. We're one of 38 growth hubs across the UK, and we deliver it by a consortium of partners led by business support specialist Exemplus, with the University of Hertfordshire, the Hertfordshire Chamber of Commerce, and Visit Hearts. Our support is fully funded, impartial, and it's free. There's no catches. It's available to all SMEs, regardless of size or stage. We're all the support you need in one place. We look at planning and visionary. We look at sales and marketing, sustainability advice, resilience and risk assessment, skills and recruitment, advice on finance and funding, workplace wellbeing, regulation and compliance. And how we deliver that service is through advice, through our growth account managers, through events that we're on today, for on-demand videos. We've got a great app called the Grant Finder, and we've got a bunch of resources that we can share with the businesses once you get in touch with us. We could do an in-depth advice, which you get your own growth account manager. That's more of a one-to-one support mechanism. And we manage referrals to additional partners as and when required across the ecosystem within Hertfordshire. There's some simple ways to get in contact with us, and I shall share these at the end. Okay, we've got a phone number, an email, and a website. Feel free to drop into us. Feel free to drop us an email. Feel free to subscribe to our newsletters. And more importantly, feel free to access some more events as you go through your journey with the Growth Hub. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to hand over to Leona, and she's going to take you through the presentation called Knowing Your Audience. So just bear with me a second. There we go. Leona, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Let me just screen with you. Hang on a sec.
There we go.
Bear with. There we go. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Hertfordshire Growth Hub webinar, Knowing Your Audience. We've partnered in Focus7 with the Growth Hub a few times now, and very delighted to be bringing you this session. So who are we? We're Focus7. We're brand-led business growth advisors and a marketing agency, and we have been working with the Hertfordshire Chamber of Commerce, Hertfordshire Growth Hub, and lots of other organisations bringing webinars and masterclasses to help support the aim of Hertfordshire Growth Hub, driving economic growth across the county of Hertfordshire and wider. I know there are other people from across the area and the region that are joining us today, so welcome. A little bit about me. I'm Chief Operating Officer with Focus7. My experience is military officer doing strategy and leadership and management. But since we've been working with Focus7, I've had some fantastic clients and opportunities to work with them on strategy and brand management, and very much enjoying it. So hopefully all of these things come together to bring you some good nuggets of information for marketing and brands strategy today. So what are we going to cover in this short session is I'm going to go through traditional audience split, discuss marketing generations, and then talk about how COVID and the lockdown impacted consumer behaviour, because we're still feeling that, and we will do going forward. Then talk a little bit about audience trends for 2023 and running into the future. Then as we finish off, I want to give you an idea of customer profiles and customer journeys so you can understand how to use the information we're going to talk about in this webinar today. Then we'll have time left at the end for session takeaways and any questions. Okay, so let's start off with traditional audience split and marketing generations. Now, you all would have heard about Generation Z, Millennials, Baby Boomers, Generation X, and probably know roughly where you fit in those. But what does that actually mean from a business or organization perspective? How does that impact on you from a marketing and the perspective of ensuring you're speaking to the customers in the right way? And this is really key part of understanding your customers and your audience. So let's start on the left with a quick overview of the marketing generations before we kick off. So this is the traditional view that we would have, and some of you may recognize these. So those born 1900 to 1945, they're the silent generation, traditionalists. But don't ignore them. Don't feel that they're not part of your audience, because they will have influence on the generations beneath them. And then the baby boomers, of course, they are 1946 to 1964. They are traditionally the people that you will see in the C-suite coming up for retirement now. They might be early retirement, but still have influence on the marketplace, regardless of your business or your organization. And then your Gen Xers, 1965 to 1976, very independent, definitely changed their view of life from the baby boomers and the silent generations. And they are, of course, now in senior management roles and probably the decision makers in an organization. But don't forget the Gen Ys and the millennials, as we would call them. Now, there's been a lot of discussion, hasn't there, over the years about millennials, that they are feel that everything has to be handed them on a plate. But that's not true at all. There really isn't how they behave. And many of you on the call today will be Gen Y millennials. And of course, you're now in management roles, decision makers yourselves. And it'd be interesting to look in a bit more detail about how we attract and retain Gen Y millennials from a customer perspective and from our marketing audience. And then there's the Gen Zers after 1997. Now, these are leaving university, they're doing tech startups, they're doing the research from a marketing perspective, so do not ignore them. Let's do a bit of a dive into what I've been touching on already. So the silent generation, or the traditionalists, over 78, and their personal values are respect and loyalty. Their aspiration is home ownership, and jobs for life is very important to them. From a technology perspective, traditionally they've been largely disengaged. You wouldn't find them online with an iPad or a phone. That's traditionally what we would see from that generation. But we'll look later on how that has changed now going forward, because it certainly has, certainly since lockdown. So they still prefer, though, their communication media, a formal letter, a flyer, face-to-face communication. So that's how you're going to get these influencers to look at your product or your services. And they focus on value for their money, and product quality is really important to them. So these will be John Lewis, Waitrose, won't really change as long as they're getting good value for money and good quality. And they love their rock and roll, don't forget. So really interesting generation, but have more of an impact now than you might think on a generational household. And it doesn't matter whether you're business to business or business to customer. We talk about business to human. So everybody's people, everybody's human, and people buy from people they like. So if you can understand all the different generations and what their needs are and how they influence each other, it's really key to making sure your messaging is right. Because if you market to everybody, you actually target nobody. So let's have a look at the baby boomers then. So their age is now 59 to 77. So they've got the last few years before retirement, but as you know, many are still working and still working hard, although they might be doing a bit of part-time or a bit of more of a bits and pieces, a portfolio career, as you will. So their personal values, hard workers, family orientated, and job security was important to them. And organizational careers is defined by their employers still for the baby boomer. And they value absolutely in-person customer service above all. So if you've got a baby boomer who is the leader, the chief exec or the MD of the business you want to sell your product or service to, then pick the phone up or go around and speak to them. And look at these statistics. 84% prefer to shop in store, and 67% note that if they are looking for this invalid and is unavailable, they prefer to purchase it at their local retailer rather than order online. Now, this was pre-COVID. So this is the traditional view of the baby boomer. Now, I will state that this is obviously market research based on generations and age groups. So just to clarify, we are, of course, generalizing based on the market research. So there will be lots of people who will move in and out of these groupings. And we look at how things have changed from this traditional view of each of the generations. Now, their communication preference, so still face-to-face ideal, also phone or email. Quite comfortable with the email, quite comfortable with a bit of social media as well. So let's have a look at Gen X. I confess I fall into Generation X, age between 47 and 58. I won't tell you where in that little grouping I am. Very much personal values are strong ethical beliefs for this group. They're independent, not necessarily loyal to one specific company, and their aspiration is work-life balance. This is where we're starting to look at, it's more important to have a work-life balance, and really early adopters of the portfolio career. And many of you on the call might find that you're doing bits and pieces of different things within your business or within your work life. And you know, they are the decision makers now with strong spending power, and they prefer honest and clear product and marketing message. So they don't want flannel in your marketing, they want really clear, honest product marketing message and a clear path to purchase. If you make it too difficult for them, then they won't be interested. They'll go and look somewhere else, which is easier to have a look at. More likely to buy products that are unique and high quality, as opposed to millennials and Gen Zers in a moment, which buy based on community and value. And that is value proposition, as in the purpose. Now, customer service is the most important driver to loyalty for Gen Xers. It's really important to make sure that you look after the customer if these are the people you're targeting within your business. They don't care as much about engaging with brands online. We say that traditionally, that might have changed post-COVID, but they're incentivized by discounts. So you can attract a Gen Xer with a good discount and a good deal. So communication media then is email and text. They're digitally savvy, very comfortable with different, you know, they'll have a smartphone, they'll have an iPad, got a laptop, all going all at the same time, very happy, comfortable with that. And communication media is email and text, digitally tech savvy, and 60% of Gen Xers use a smartphone on a daily basis, while 67% use a laptop PC daily. Now, this is pre-COVID traditional, and we're going to look at how it's changed in a moment. So I've mentioned already the Gen Ys and millennials. Now, they're 26 to 46. They're in management roles, they're decision makers, very much the first digital entrepreneurs working with organizations, not for. Now, their aspiration is freedom and flexibility. Personal values is they're very adaptable, energetic and optimistic. And those of you who employ millennials and Gen Ys will know that these are probably your employees that like the hybrid working, they like the flexible working, probably not bothered about going back to the office, happy working from home, they like that flexibility. As long as perhaps you're having a meetup every now and again. They're not impressed by job titles, so don't make up being a CEO when there's only just one of you. They won't be impressed by that at all. Always looking to improve their skills and workplace benefits. And look at this done here. Authenticity is incredibly important to this generation of millennials, are inherently suspicious of being sold to or even lied to by brands. So they want authenticity in your marketing. And 33% rely on blogs before making a purchase. And 81% of millennials never buy anything without reading a review first. So if you've got testimonials and reviews, the millennial will absolutely look at that before they do anything else. I'm sure some of you are nodding and recognizing yourselves in this description. Now, 50% are likely to purchase from a company that supports a cause. So your social responsibility is really important here. They absolutely enjoy that. And 62% of millennials say that if a brand engages with them on social networks, they're more likely to become a loyal customer. So a Gen Y millennial really wants you to build a tribe, build that support on social networks, include them, ask them questions, engagement is really important to them. They're very price conscious and base purchasing decisions on getting the utmost value out of their purchase. So communication media then, you won't be surprised, online or mobile and multi-device savvy, as I mentioned earlier. So Gen Zers then, these are sixth formers at uni, at college, leaving uni now, new graduates. We've got some customers that are Gen Zers that are absolutely brilliant, fantastic, fresh startups whilst they're at university, doing great things already. This is a Gen Zer. They are very tech literate, fast learners, prefer virtual work. They like predictability, so not quite as adaptable as millennials. So they like you to be really clear what you're going to do and say what you're going to do and stick to that. They're finance conscious from a very young age, which is really interesting. And they're career multitaskers. These are the people who will be running 2 jobs online virtually at the same time. And seriously, that happens a lot. So if you're employing a millennial and you're employing them, a Gen Zer, and they're all online, you're all virtual, don't be surprised if they're rocking something else as well at the same time, and probably doing okay at both of them. And so they like to multitask. They like to do pop-up businesses, very entrepreneurial, small pockets, but big influence. Purchasing decisions made by judgment of authenticity. There's that word again, being authentic. They distrust brands a little bit, and they very much will be aware of the social responsibility of global brands. So if a global brand makes a mistake with, I don't know, slave trading or anything that is inappropriate, then they will be aware of that and make decisions based on that. So your social responsibility is really, economic responsibility is really important from that perspective. So 77% of Gen Zers prefer ads that show real people in real situations. So really interesting. If these are your target audience, then don't use stock images in your website or in your marketing. Don't use them because they're obvious, especially if you're a creative or in marketing. It's really obvious if it's stock images. So please try and use real people in real situations. That's what they love. That will really resonate with them. They don't like ads that make life look perfect. Don't try and make it perfect. They're not interested in that. They know it's not real. Now, 80% of purchases by this generation influenced by social media. So they look at channels, they look at influencers, and I mean this in the term of the Instagram, the online influencers. And the biggest impact, Instagram, as you'd expect, Snapchat and YouTube. Now the Gen Zers, whereas we in the older generations might say, I'm going to Google that, a Gen Zer will YouTube it because there's more content and more data on video available to them than there is on Google. So be aware of that. If you've not got any video content, then you're going to miss a trick when it comes to attracting Gen Z as an audience. But they're willing to shell out more on brands that contribute to social economic causes. So they're very alive to organizations that have foundations or do charity work or local community work. It's really important to them. So if you're doing that already in your business or organization, then please shout about it. It's great. It's great a conversation on your socials, but the Gen Zers really like it a lot. And nearly half of Gen Zers say the most important thing while shopping is to find things quickly. So if you've got an app on a website, don't make it too slow. Find things easily, make the purchase easy. They just need to be a couple of clicks away. If you're making it too complicated, they'll move on to somewhere that's easier. So over 60% say they'll not use your app or website if it's too slow. So keeping up to date with your online presence is really important for them. So communication media, handheld devices, wearable devices, and less browsing when studying from home, then they'll use the laptop. So very agile when it comes to what they use. But I'm going to bring these up. You might not have heard of this. Generation Alpha. These are the little ones. So from 2010, they're age under 12. They're technical, mobile, global, visual, digital, social, chatbots, smart speakers. Now these are the kids that are showing granny and granddad how to use the iPad, how to change the channels. You might think you got parent control on the TV, but no, they can work their way around it and they find out what the password is. So these are super tech savvy. They can multitask. They can do everything at the same time. But because of this, let's be aware that in a multi-generational household, which is very much on trend at the moment, that these youngsters are making influential decisions for their grandparents and their parents. So you'll find that they will say, I'm going to look that up. They will know where they want to go on holiday. They will look at what product they want. They will come to their parents saying, on the iPad, saying, look at this, can we get this? And that'll creep across the generations into granny and granddad. So interestingly, do not underestimate the power and the influence of Generation Alpha in purchasing decisions made by their parents and their grandparents. And also possibly including B2B when they're at home talking about things. They're so tech savvy, they do get involved. Okay, that's traditional. Really interesting. You probably knew some of that already, but then came COVID. So why am I still talking about COVID? Well, it was a global pandemic. It created a mental health crisis, and mental well-being is really, really important in the workplace, but also being aware of that from your customer's perspective. And it's created an unknown economic future. You know, we're definitely in a cost of living crisis. We're definitely still struggling. We're still not sure whether we're going into a depression or not, or a recession. So it's really important to be aware and alive to these impacts that COVID and the global pandemic and other factors, of course, have had on how we behave as customers. And life at home changed how we will do business forever. And the big difference is it did make us more reliant online. And of course, there's political unrest, whether it's the extreme right or the extreme left, and you see it in all of the Western countries, there are changes afoot. And those that keep an eye on America in particular will see that there's been a lot of unrest, hasn't there? And we've got unrest now in this country at the moment. We might not be showing it quite as, what's the phrase? We might not be showing it quite as much as in America or in France, but still there's political unrest, isn't there? And change is needed. But it does have an impact on behaviour, and it has an impact on purchases and confidence in making purchases. And this doesn't matter whether you're business to business or business to customer. So let's have a look then at the post-COVID changes and the post-lockdown changes. So there's no surprise that there's been a shift to digital. The shift to digital persists across all countries globally. So this is important if you're international or global reach with your business, or local, or just in the UK. This has impacted everybody. So consumers keep low out-of-home engagement, very much so. And food and household categories have seen an average of over 30% growth in online customer base that is sustained. So we started getting our food purchased online. We're doing things like, you know, online boxes of food or vegetables. That is still persisting a lot in a lot of households. And the household categories are very much included. If you're in that category with your business, then if you're not online or you're not offering that type of delivery service, you're missing a trick, because Jeff Bezos and Amazon and all the other bigger supermarkets are going to jump in there. And the next thing, the second thing, is values and essentials. So consumers in most countries, particularly in Europe and in Japan, interestingly, tend to be less optimistic than in China, India and Indonesia. And those that have got global international businesses, that reach into the emerging economies is interesting. They've got a little bit more optimism, but we're still a little bit cautious. And we're still having to cut back. If you're in a luxury category or discretionary category, you've obviously had trouble whilst we were in COVID, and whilst we're still unsure with the cost of living crisis. That's going to impact you as a business. You need to be alive and aware to that. And even travel, we're still doing staycations and probably shorter travel destinations, although we all went a bit mad, didn't we, once we were allowed out. And clothing and footwear and jewellery is still not quite fully recovered, although it has started to improve. So the third thing to be aware of the change since COVID is a shock to loyalty. So given consumers' price sensitivity, value remains the primary reason for consumers to try new brands, as well as new places to shop. So aside from value, convenience and availability are most often cited as top drivers for consumers' decisions about where to shop, while quality and purpose, which is desire to support local businesses, for example, are the most important when choosing a new brand. So it's interesting that Amazon, Jeff Bezos, when he's asked, how is he so successful? What's the new next trend? And he famously said, stop asking me what the new next trend is. Ask me what are the 3 things stable in time. And Jeff Bezos said those 3 things stable in time are that with Amazon, he will deliver good value, convenience, and availability of a reach and depth of stock. And these are, interestingly, the very things that research is showing that customers want, which is why they had such a massive influx of customers and repeat customers, really increasing over the lockdown, as you'd expect. So let's have a look then at the global trends of customers who have tried new shopping behaviours since COVID. This was research done by McKinsey's, who looked all over the world. And you can see the green there, the UK. So 63% of customers tried new shopping behaviours. And look, above all of that, look at all those countries, up to 96% in India. Now that is basically going online. So 63% in the UK of customers are now went online as a result of being in lockdown. That makes sense, doesn't it? But look at the intent to continue on the right-hand side. So in the UK, 81 to 88% intend to continue with that shopping behaviour. So if you've got a product or a service that can be purchased online or purchased through an app or is available to have a look at in that manner, then you definitely need to be aware and alive to this change post-COVID and post-lockdown. And of course, the intent in all the research that everybody has pretty much on the right-hand side to continue with that behaviour. And this is goods, services, everything, not just consumers from a business to customer perspective. So this is for everybody. So what have we learned then? So value, quality and brand purpose are the top reason for trying a new brand. Now what we mean by purpose, if you're not familiar with that, and I touched on that on the previous slide, is purpose is what do you stand for? What do you do it for? What's the reason? What's your why? What is the business why? And it's not I want to pay the mortgage, oh, I want to pay the salaries. It's the purpose in your business has to be a higher purpose. It has to be your North Star. And we do a lot of great work with our customers on identifying the purpose. Because if you can articulate that, what you do it for, the higher reason, that really resonates with your customers. And it doesn't matter what business you're in or what organization you're in, really resonates. So value, quality, and brand purpose are the top reasons for trying a new brand. And then convenience, value, and availability. Notice back to Jeff Bezos' 3 things stable in time for Amazon are the top reasons for shopping at a new supplier. So really interesting perspective. It's completely highlighted these elements. And you remember from the traditional generations that we went through that your Gen Zs and your Gen Ys are very much, we're already going in this direction. But now everybody is interested in value, quality, purpose, convenience, value, and availability. So that's a good dive into that third element. But the fourth element, and I've touched on this already, is connecting to the communities. So there was very much focus about behavioural change to limit the spread of disease during COVID, wasn't there? And then we absolutely saw a large increase in volunteering, everybody helping each other, communities all support each other, helping behaviours, and supporting individuals and community well-being and a sense of belonging is really important. And we quite like that sense of community and sense of belonging and that community well-being. And many of you will know that our head of operations, Bridget Webb, does a lot of work with our team in Focus7 and our customers actually on well-being and making sure that our team actually absolutely are well looked after within Focus7. But it's not just that. Try and do that more widely. How can you help the community? How can you help the people around you? How can you help your customers? An interesting statistic on this is that 80% of consumers feel more connected to their communities post-COVID, and 88% of consumers expect that these connections to stay intact. So, you know, those Facebook groups on the community, the WhatsApp groups you had in the street, all of those are continuing in general and being used. So that sense of community and the rising community care and belonging and values has been observed, and very much researchers across the whole world has found that that's what we now crave. And successful brands can tap into this trend by creating mini communities and building your tribe of supporters and fans that'll jump up and down excited about your product and your service. So supporting their members and their community with engagement activities and incentives, and brands are really finding that's important and being more vocal about it. You know, do stuff in the community and do stuff to support causes and ensure that's a key part of your messaging, because it's really important. So let's have a little look at how brands responded to COVID and the rising sense of community and local customers, and how they built communities on the back of that. It's worth just having a look at how some of them did that to explain what I'm talking about. So, normally when I do a masterclass, I get everybody to shout this out, but obviously shout it out to yourselves. We all know which brand this is, don't we? Kentucky Fried Chicken, but do you all remember what their strapline was? Yeah, I'm sure you all remember it. It's finger licking good. Now, you can imagine, can't you? That didn't go down so well during COVID. And cheeky Nando's said, turns out finger licking isn't good, rather than reach for the soap. Very funny and amusing bit of marketing from Nando's to have an amusing dig at one of their competitors. So from a marketing perspective, that's it, the gloves are off. They've started the banter. So there was then a bit of press. Kentucky Fried Chicken, finger licking good, I'd called it irresponsible by viewers during a coronavirus outbreak. How dare they not consider coronavirus back in 1956? Lots of talk about it on social media, all amusing. Kentucky Fried Chicken really dealt with it so quickly, with starting by blurring out the finger licking good on their adverts, and just doing it's just good. And then Iceland joined in the fun with missing KFC. This also coincided with them having a problem with supply chain, but that's a separate issue. And they said, you know, we've got the answer, just Iceland, stay at home. So the world's stressing the importance of washing your hands, not touching your face. And they came up with that thing we've been saying for 64 years, ignore it. Very good, clever marketing straight away. And then they quickly used their influencers to ask the audience, come up with a temporary replacement. Fast response from Kentucky Fried Chicken, audience engagement. They built a community. They got influencers on socials joining in. You know, people in their pajamas with the Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket in their PJs, and really tapped into a bit of competition, a bit of entertainment, and a bit of fun. And you know, that continued. That thing we always say, ignore it for now. Wash fingers thoroughly before licking. And it was amusing and kept their strapline in mind. And then they joined in with trying to play some other ones. So with Red Bull, instead of until we can finger lick again, KFC gives you wings, and then joking with Red Bull. And then you saw some others then with Vodacom. This is in South Africa actually. Simba Crisps, if you know, in South Africa. Raws with flavour. So they just tried a bit of banter by stealing and rewriting other people's branding. So the key message there really is to have some fun with it, and that's how they reacted. So it made us want more fun with our marketing. So looking at that, we've looked at traditional generations, we've looked at the impact of how it has changed since lockdown, and that is still very much the case in 2023. And what does that mean now from audience trends and how to promote your business in the shadow of post-COVID? So with an increased focus on well-being of self and society, the relevance of brands giving back to society and environment has never been higher. And that's very much from a marketeer perspective, very much still the case. So look at these statistics, building on what we've already discussed today. So 75% believe that brands should deliver socially responsible messages. 72% said that companies behaving sustainably was more important to them since COVID. It's interesting, isn't it? And 56% were interested in brands initiatives and are particularly keen on brands that actively participate in efforts to support future issues. So basically, be socially responsible, be sustainable, and look at the community. And this is what it's telling us, that the majority of consumers want businesses to prioritise public service, community service over marketing. Brand purpose, and remember what I said about purpose means your higher purpose. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to stand for over messaging and sales? They don't want transactional sales anymore. They want you to talk about you and the people that you work with. That's more important. And community health over brand health. So interesting messaging that's changed over the last few years, very much so. So how do we as businesses and organizations take all that on board? So I would say be useful, spread accurate information, educate is really important. Educate, inform, provide updates and forecasts relevant to your industry. So many of you will have seen that we should regularly share white papers and information to help businesses. Over the summer, we've been sharing lots of really great information and helping businesses to understand the basics of marketing, like doing this webinar today. That's how we at Focus7 are helping other businesses grow and develop and move forward. So be useful and show empathy. Engage your audience on a personal level. Be relevant to their experiences. Working from home, cost of living crisis, overarching messages of we're all in this together, let's all work together. It's really important. There's business owners and leaders in businesses and organizations. We have a responsibility, don't we, to help and support our supply chain, our stakeholders, and our customers. So show that you care more about them than the sale. That's really interesting. It's difficult to do, isn't it? When you want the sale, what can you offer to them? There's a great tip that when you're offering a service, think of your lovely dear old granny who wants to buy imagine if they want to buy your product or your service. How would you give them that platinum service, the customer service? How would you absolutely spoil them and lavish them whilst they were enjoying the product or service that you're offering? And if you can replicate that in your mind, that gold-plated service that you would offer to a dear relative, then do that for all your customers. Show them that you care about them more than the sale. Then the third thing is show you're part of a community. And I've mentioned this quite a lot already, I know. But explore geotagging your ads. So what I mean by that is if you're doing something in the community, I don't know, you're doing something in Hitchin, tag Hitchin in your Facebook while you're talking about it. Why not? Go for it. Become a part of your local community on Facebook. And there are lots of other, I know only old people are on Facebook now, she says jokingly, but there are lots of other ways that you can absolutely ensure that you're making sure you're part of the community and sharing that and share your community projects and your community causes as part of your messaging. And supporting that cause, better still, if it's providing aid to local groups or families, discount to key workers, supporting charities, wellbeing and healthy minds, then shout about it and encourage your supply chain to do the same. As you know, we support the Armed Forces. We're Gold Employer Recognition Scheme award winners with Ministry of Defence. And one of the things that we do is support that cause. So we will always share, and lots of our followers will know, we will talk about it, whether it's remembrance, whether it's the forces, troops at Christmas, or Armed Forces Day or Armed Forces Week. We'll shout about that cause and encourage our suppliers and our customers to do the same. So find your cause that you're interested in and make sure you shout about it and encourage people to do the same, because it builds that community, it builds that sense of belonging, and it really does make a difference. And we've already shown with a little snippet of how Kentucky Fried Chicken and some of their competitors and other brands had a bit of fun. Make people smile. It's back to what I said earlier, is that people buy from people. And it doesn't matter whether it's business to business and you want to speak to the top chief exec in your target company that you want to sell to. Still, make them smile. It's really important. So let's have a quick look. The last 5 minutes, I just want to have a quick look. What does all that mean? We've had a good cancer through, traditional generations, how it's been impacted through COVID, how it's been impacted within lockdown, and very much a trend is we're in multi-generational households, or linking in more so, and the influence of everybody on each other's purchasing decisions. And what does that mean then from a customer profiling and journey mapping perspective? So I'm just going to run through these so that you're aware of it. So have a look at it, understanding your audience clusters. Now you're going to get these slides as a PDF after this from Matt and the team. And this is a really good slide to use. And just look at the top bit with the clusters. What I mean by clusters is, who are your audience? Who are you aiming to target with your business or your organization? So have a think about who are they? And fill in the top grey bits when you get it. And identify 2, 3, 4 clusters of groups of audience or target customers that you want to aim at. And then the next bit of this slide is to look at the split and the revenue. Sometimes when we do this exercise with our customers, when we run through our workshops with them to help them understand their audience, we find that they're spending a lot of time on people that don't make them a lot of money. And that's quite a revelation sometimes, because they end up working on the tail. It's the 80-20 rule. You sometimes spend 80% of the time on the people that give you 20% of the profit or of your margin. Whereas if you've got a cluster that gives you 20% of of your cluster, that gives you 20% but 80% of your profit, then just change that and tweak it. So it's good to go through that process, and you can do that when I send the PDFs out for you. Okay, so what do I mean by these clusters? Let's explain what I mean. So let's say Hertfordshire Growth Hub. They're customers that they're looking to attract. As an example, I haven't talked this through with Matt, so I'm guessing. So cluster 1, new startups, brand new startups. So they could be Gen Zers, couldn't they? Brand new startups, out of college, great new idea to work on. Then cluster 2 might be SMEs 1 to 5 years, doing a scale up from a relatively new business perspective. Cluster 3 might be SMEs 5 years plus from a scale up from that, or SMEs with 20 years looking for their exit plans and trying to get all that tidied up. So as an example, if we use Hertfordshire Growth Hub as an example, those 4 clusters could be the target audience that they want to attract to come and share with their brilliant work that they do. So that's worth looking at to understand the audience clusters. And then what we say to our customers is take one of those. Just take one of those clusters and then go through a profile. Now, we've done a lot of work on the demographics on the left-hand side. I need to do this for each of the separate clusters that you've got. And we've looked at age, haven't we, and generation. What does that mean, and how do they buy things, and how do they look at making decisions? But of course, there's lots of other things to take into consideration in the demographics. There's gender, education, marital status, occupation, job titles. Now, it's interesting to be aware that sometimes if you're aiming at an SME, a medium-sized business, or an enterprise, larger-sized business, the person doing the research could be a Gen Zer, could be the intern doing the research. I'm looking for leadership training in Hertfordshire. So you might need to attract, the initial attract could be Gen Zer. Then they report it to their manager, who could be the millennial, the Gen Y, and they're making the decision on the shortlist, and they might decide who they want to give leadership training to their business within Hertfordshire. But then the decision maker to sign it off could be the chief finance officer, who's Gen X. So you need to think who you're targeting at each stage within that. It's complicated, isn't it? But it's great work when you do it, because you get some aha moments. And then moving across the slide, on the slide, you see, what's their story? What's their background? What are their goals? What are they seeking to try and achieve? What motivates them? What are their pain points, their obstacles, and how can you help them with their pain points? How can you help their life be easier? And then what channels, where do they hang out? I've touched on already that different social media channels are used by different generations, different age groups. I'm sure some of you will be aware of that already. So be aware of which platforms they're on. And what do they love? Which brands do they fancy? What do they really what really sets them, sets them alight from a purchasing perspective. So if you can do that profiling audience for each of your clusters, then it's a really good start to really understanding your audience, and use the work we've done already on the generations to start that work for you. And what we end up is something like this. So as an example, this is Graham. We've allocated a picture and a name to him. He's a freelance designer. You can put a bio in there as an example, and it's just a made-up person. It's an avatar. You're profiling. Who do you think is going to purchase your product or your service? What are their goals? What motivates them? What are their pain points? What channels do they use? What brand affinity have they got? Really build a picture for who Graham is, and you can do that for whoever your ideal customer is. And do you know what? Go for it. If your ideal customer is a far reach, if you start building about how to talk to them, then you really understand how to do that, how to build it. And there's a great story about Innocent Smoothies. They wanted to get into Tesco's. And of course, as many of you will know, Tesco's is in Hertfordshire, the headquarters. They identified who in Tesco's they wanted to talk to, who were the decision makers to get Innocent Smoothies on the shelves in Tesco's. And they narrowed it down to 3 people. One person commuted in on the train from London, so they bought a billboard on his train route, so that as he went into work every day, he saw a massive billboard with Innocent Smoothies. They were literally a startup at this point, so big investment for them. The second thing they did was they found somebody else drove to work. They found out the route to work. They were too stalkerish, just a little bit stalkerish, and they then put a van with a wraparound with the logo Innocent Smoothies, drove up and down their route during the commuting times. And they did all of this for the individuals that the decision makers. So by the time the decision was made for Innocent Smoothies to be into Tesco's and the shelves, those decision makers went, oh yeah, I know them. Oh yeah, I've seen them. And fantastic work. They admit it now, obviously, but brilliant initiative from the Innocent Smoothies, of course, a global brand now, very successful. That's how they got into Tesco shelves. And even on a smaller scale, we had a brilliant client many years ago now, where we did this work with them, and we identified he was a project manager for when you did an extension or wanted an extension done or a roof conversion. He would project manage that for people, and he identified that his target audience were the yummy mummies, and where would they hang out? And he thought, we identified they were going to hang out whilst the kids were at school. They were going to hang out at David Lloyd's gym in Stevenage. So he set up, I'm sorry if he's on the call, I'm telling you secrets now. So he set up a pop-up at the gym during yoga and Pilates classes, and he was swamped every time he did it. Genius. You wouldn't have thought of that, would you? He's a building project manager, but he absolutely identified where his target audience were going to be twice a day, and he nailed it. He's never looked back. That's the value of doing the profiling. And then we talk about the journey map. It's a customer journey map, is a visual representation of every experience the customer's going to have. And a successful journey map will give you a real insight. Once you've identified who they are, what's the journey they're going to take to buy your product and to deal with you and to build a long-term relationship. So this is how the customer journey definition. What's the touch point? Have they seen you on social? They then go and have a look at your website. They might then sign up for your newsletters. They might then ask for more information. They make a phone call, and then you're having a face-to-face. All of those are touch points. All of them have to be a brilliant part of the customer journey. Now, you might have collateral that matches that. You've got good socials, you've got a good website. But if you meet up, do you want to leave them with a brochure? Why not? Print isn't dead, you know, just because we're all digital. Give them a little, have a face-to-face. Here's a leaflet with all the things that we do. Maybe you need some collateral to cope with that. And then you start to build, this is a simple customer journey, but social media, building up that relationship. It's into the funnel that we talk about in marketing. You push them into the funnel as part of a simple customer journey. That's a complicated one, but don't worry, you probably need that just to start with. This is the type of thing our team build for our big customers. So that's customer journey. That's how we explain that. And that's what I wanted to get over today, really. So the key takeaways are: talk to your customer, find out what matters to them, and then create solutions for their problems. Center them in your brand, be customer focused, be people focused. And that'll set you up not just for 2023 and the post-COVID behaviours, but for years to come. So what have we covered? Traditional audience split to give you an idea and a flavour for marketing generations, COVID impact to consumer behaviour that is still in place now, and some audience trends for 2023. And then I touched on very briefly audience profiling, understanding how to build a profile and why it's important, and how we build customer journeys. So there we go. Over some questions. This is us. I'm going to stop sharing and then see if we've got any questions.